Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session on generative AI for retail. Today, we're going to be talking about a number of use cases for retail, and I'll just bring up the presentations and kind of run through that. So, I'll make that larger, actually. Cool. So, what we have on the agenda today is, we're going to go through quickly, just give a little bit of an introduction to who we are. Talk about the goal for today, which is around enhanced productivity for retailers. We will then go through our 6 use cases that we've pulled together and talk about at the end a little bit on how to get started with generative AI as well. So a little bit of background on who we are. I'm joined today by my co-founder, Ashley Maloney. Say hi, Ash.
Hi, all.
And so we are, we've been working together about 8 years now, working with Google Cloud, about 6 years on a number of different projects and training. We've flown around the world training cloud and data engineering and AI and such to a number of businesses. We worked on some pretty large projects on Google Cloud, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that, unless there's anything else you want to add to that, Ashley.
No, I think that's it. I'm quite excited to go through today. Generative AI is obviously a topic that a lot of people are interested in right now. It's progressing extremely fast, so it should be a good one.
Yeah, cool. I can see now. Cool. So, in terms of the goal for today, so what we are looking at is how retailers are using and trialing generative AI to help achieve enhanced productivity or cost optimization, depending on which way you look at it. Not included in today's session is around how you use generative AI to improve customer experience, which is the other major use case or set of use cases for application of generative AI. Google has created this generative AI maturity graph. So it gives you a bit of an idea of where most customers are on the kind of the graph to becoming a generative AI disruptor. Most businesses are at the moment at the beginning. They're understanding use cases and maybe struggling so because there are obviously so many different applications of generative AI, but understanding where exactly to focus on is the challenge. It's a bit difficult to understand where and how to use AI when the use cases are so high level. So until you actually see it in practice and get some actual measurable results, it's a bit difficult to get started, which is why so many people are at the beginning of that journey. Now, the next step on that journey is to actually using Gen AI for operational efficiency. So this is around kind of helping to optimize internal business processes, and this is where we see the early adoption being most key. And then after that, you move into kind of the competitive advantage, the external kind of working use cases with your customers. Before moving into creating your own LLMs, which is kind of the high end and most effort. So our first use case for today, so we've got 6 of these. Our first one today is ease of access to internal information. So one of the challenges we can see generative AI solving is around policies and internal procedures. So there is a lot of information that usually exists within a business around kind of policies, procedures. Maybe it's recipes or how to do returns, how to do refunds, that sort of thing. And that information usually exists and is well documented. But the friction of being able to get access to that information usually means that it can be difficult to be followed or for the staff members to actually gain access to that information. So the key thing here is how do we make it easy for staff to find those policies and procedures? Now, this is where we can see generative AI coming into this with chatbot and search. So you can build out a internal chatbot and combine that with Vertex AI search, which is basically a natural language search, which then enables you to have both the benefits of having short chat style responses from the generative AI, but also being able to have natural language search queries such as which products do we have that are vegan and under £20, or show me our staff policies for staff appraisal, show me our policies for staff appraisals, those sorts of questions, which means you can combine those into a response for the staff member that has both the short, concise, quick answer from the generative AI chat, but also the more in-depth playbook response. So I say playbooks because there's a lot of engineering background in this, but where you've got those kind of longer form content pieces, maybe it is your full kind of policy documents or procedure documents that would be in your intranet or in your Confluence or in some sort of system. Maybe it's documents on a drive that the staff members have access to. But yeah, being able to give that information to the user in a very quick fashion is often causes some friction, and then that's where they maybe fall short sometimes.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, right?
Mm.
How has the evolution of generative AI? So like we've been able to do some of this stuff at a very simple level for a while, right? But how is the evolution of generative AI making this easier? And what's the benefit of generative AI and some of the modern tools for this kind of use case?
Yeah, so I mean, the key thing here is that there's a few aspects. So first of all, you've got your if I go to the next page, actually, this will help explain. So you've got your chat language model. So this is your generative AI. It's the quick response. So based on a normal kind of chatbot, what responses can it give us out of the box? And these are now getting to the stage where they're actually quite advanced and almost at a human level in terms of their accuracy, if not beyond, on some of the models. And you can combine that with the search results. So if you think like the Google search algorithm, it's quite a pretty clever search algorithm that's helps millions of users every day on Google search. If you think where did you go when you want to find something, you search on Google. That same search algorithm technology is now available to customers, and it then enables it's not just a search by keywords. It's the algorithm actually understands the content that it's searching, so it indexes that content more than just the keywords. So it's able to tell, the example I used there, the vegan products under £20, which they may not be explicitly tagged as vegan or under £20, and then you can actually have the bot go and figure those things out for you. The search bot actually go and figure those things out for you.
So that's quite a key thing, right? To have a quick discussion about is that what we're saying is that generative AI now understands context and intent of the search. So whereas historically, when we had traditional searches, we'd have to know exactly what we want to search for, right? But now we're using large language models, and what generative AI does is able to take that, in this context of combining these tools, use the Google search algorithm and the Google search technology to extract information from the page and discover new information in the way that obviously they're famous for with google.com, but also use the large language model to be able to search that information without knowing the exact keywords or search term that you're looking for. The large language models now understand context, right? And that's why we're talking about internet as a use case, because what we've seen with the internet use cases is that, let's say you have an employee that needs to find out specific information about a company, they might not necessarily know what it is specifically they're looking for, or what it would typically be called, like what a process is called, or what that specific action is called internally, but they know roughly what they're looking for from, either just describing their challenges. And, if I'm understanding right, what you're saying is Vertex AI search and the large language model combined makes that much simpler.
Yeah, it's the whole generative AI, at least on the tech side, the whole thing is that basically they can now do things that they weren't explicitly programmed to do with logic. So previously we would have to have like a decision tree or some kind of like complex logic that feeds users to the correct results, especially in the chat. Now with the generative AI, they're just very good at predicting what comes next, and you do that at an advanced enough stage, and it looks like real thought. And you combine that with the search algorithm, and you can give in your response a really nice kind of short snippet along with a set of results from your own document store where your high quality documents live. And they get the best of both worlds. Then they get the short snippet, which could be their quick answer, and they get the search result there as well. But not only that, we can take that information and we can combine that with other data sources. So depending on the information that the chat is indexing, this could be maybe weather data, seasonal sales data, other data sources that essentially can enrich that response even further. And then so we end up with this solution that is giving very highly accurate responses to the staff members that are contextually correct. They're accurate. They're on trend for what is expected to be right now based on those external data sources. And not only that, but we can custom train that large language model so that then it's giving an even better response. So maybe it's using the correct brand voice, the correct language, and giving the correct responses, even in the generative AI chat as well. So if you think about that, like your Bard or your Chat GPT responses, like imagine having that tailored to your business and giving the short, quick responses that are accurate to the need of your staff member. So yeah, cool. So so our second use case is around making global documents searchable. So on a similar trend to the first. So there is a challenge around unstructured documents in business. So if you think about things like your contracts with suppliers, your invoices, statements, forms, maybe if you collected data offline, that sort of thing, that where that information is being collected. So quite often, like contracts and invoices and statements are all PDFs, for example. That is unstructured data. It's not easy to interrogate that data. You can find a file by name. You can go into an individual file and you can do a kind of a find using Adobe Reader or something like that. But if you're going to do that at scale over millions of documents, that becomes very difficult, essentially, or it has been traditionally. So this is where the challenge here is around, say, you might be asking a very specific question. So maybe you're a mobile phone retailer, and you're asking how many customers are working, are we undercharging on old contracts? That kind of information may not exist in your database, but it exists in the documents. And now we're getting to I'll go through in a second, but we're getting to the stage where we can start asking those questions. So yeah, it's how do we process that large amount of documents and actually make it searchable? And this is where the document AI solution from Google is essentially it's opening up the doors to access and interrogate this information. So what we can do is we can extract the text from those documents using optical character recognition, and store and search the metadata on those documents as well. So going into a bit more detail on that, you can extract the text and the layouts. So it understands the structure of the documents and can pull out certain information from those documents. If, for example, you've got a whole load of forms, you can extract key value pairs, so question and answer. Or if you've got a bulk amount of documents such as statements, invoices, contracts, that sort of thing, where the structure is very consistent, you can then do bulk processing on that information, on the information in those documents to extract certain aspects. All with the end goal of integrating that data with other systems and being able to search and store the information as well.
And I think it's that combination of technologies that now makes this much more exciting, right? We've had, OCR technologies and PDF extraction technologies that you even personally developed 1 years ago, right? So they've been around for a while, but it's the being able to combine with the natural language capabilities that historically you'd have to know exactly what you're looking for. You have to know the exact wording that you're looking for. You'd have to know the structure of the document and where it would be within the structure of the document. But now combining these technologies, we're able to use like Google's document AI as an example to cleverly extract that information without necessarily having the structure predefined. But also we don't need to know that is structured programmatically to now find the information we need, because the large language models can take your question and convert that into an action. And I think that's what makes this a little bit more exciting, right? Is combining these two technologies to say, right, exactly as you said, you could ask it a question. How do I find customers that haven't paid X amount or whatever? And it will now convert that into a search query and search across the documents that have been extracted using these tools. So it's the collection of technologies that now makes this much more exciting, but also much more valuable to individuals or companies that are building this stuff.
Yeah, it's how accessible it's coming now. Like previously, this stuff would have taken weeks to build. Now you can get into those documents in a lot quicker fashion because you've got AI on your side actually helping you delve into those documents, and generative AI helping you understand the context of those documents as well. So yeah, it's easier now than it was before. Cool. So the next use case is around creative assistance for product and marketing. So this is essentially the creative challenge. So product and marketing teams quite often need to build marketing copy, images, logos, adverts, all sorts of creatives, billboards, that sort of thing. The challenge with this is those iterations tend to take time. It can be several hours building out a single iteration, or days in some cases, depending on how fast your creative team are. Yeah, it can those iterations essentially when it takes that long to do the new iterations, the problem is being able to quickly apply strategy and changes to that and do your rapid prototyping. Well, the challenge is it's not so rapid. So this could be asking, like putting this in question form as before. So I want to create a logo using the brand name Orange Ties, not to be confused with any other fruit. And yeah, I want that logo to be on the bottle, and I want that bottle in a splash of chopped oranges so I can get a nice picture going or something like that. And maybe I want to change that splash. Like I see the image and I'll change it. All of a sudden, that is now you're many hours or days into that process of building out that creative. And you've only built one, essentially. You've only managed to get to one iteration, and it's not highly personalized, and it's not kind of responding to trends and that sort of thing. So your iterations there is the time it takes to build them that's the challenge, and that's the challenge where generative AI is now basically coming in and helping solve that by providing that creative assistance. So what it means is that we can now generate those creatives in a far lesser time, because we can essentially use prompts to start providing those mock-ups and not even mock-ups, the finalized images it's rendering. Yeah, it essentially means you're building those out a lot faster. So what that then does is it unlocks a new level of creativity and innovation. So you're able to say you wanted to run a series of 200 different ads, highly personalized, different market segments. Previously, having to build all those out would have taken a huge amount of time and probably be prohibitively so in the amount of time it would have taken to build out those ads. But now, because you can do it through prompts and you can build them out in seconds or minutes, it enables you to test and refine those ideas very rapidly. And then that means you can focus on the iterations, you can focus on the strategy and how you can use a large amount of highly personalized images within your marketing campaigns, for instance. And when you do kind of get to your end result and you have your images, they can also do the upscaling and things as well. So where you need a high resolution image for the kind of print or in-store displays, you can do that very quickly just by asking it to upscale it and getting a very high res image. And then you can combine this with the generative AI pieces around text. So we've been using, for example, a prompt that we've built that helps us build out our LinkedIn marketing. So we give it some information on the kind of blog posts or LinkedIn posts that we want to generate, and it's generating all of that for us. And it's not perfect; it needs some tweaking, but and it needs our own insights added on top. But it's a starting point and something we can add to. Now, what you can do is you can tie all these things together, so you can then very quickly generate a whole bunch of ads, generate the marketing copy to go on top, generate that copy in the user's own language as well. So we can combine that with the translation API as well. So it's when you connect all these items together, all of a sudden you can run a very personalized campaign across a huge number of individuals. So yeah, a huge number of personas.
And we had some fun, right, when we were setting up the proof of concept around the package design that we had, where we was able to generate what that product looked like with our logo and some other design considerations as an actual physical product using the image generation, didn't we? I was impressed with that. That came out good.
Yeah, I've got a mock-up, well, a little GIF in a second, which will show kind of that in
Perfect.
process. So very similarly, the next use case is around product catalog management, which is a very similar use case. So where we are essentially having a large number of products, and maybe we need to categorize those products into the various categories that they need to live in, or we need to extract information from the descriptions we've been given from the vendors, the suppliers on those products. Maybe we need that in a JSON format so that we can have it shown in our website in specifications. And we might have products that are missing product descriptions or missing images, or missing images from certain angles. Well, we want to try something else. We want to make it seasonal. Like all of a sudden, we can do all those things now, and we can do it at scale. It's really opening up the doors to that. And just to give you an example, so this GIF here. So this is the new tool. It's ready for kind of testing and playing with it, but you can kind of see how this stuff works. So you can drop in a prompt and then very quickly describe a scene where you want your product to be, or adjust the look of the product, or do whatever you want to, essentially just through a prompt, and very quickly you're getting variations. So it's a bit like Midjourney, if you've ever used that, where you can essentially generate your own images. But this is studio grade imagery from text prompts. Now this is still in beta, and you have to request access at the moment. But this is, it's very quick then to combine great imagery, highly personalized, with great copy, all from one interface essentially.
Yeah, and if you combine that with the dialogue features that come from generative AI, like we were able to get it to ask us questions to kind of extract the brief and then prompt the designing of the images. And that was pretty useful, because it's good to kind of have that dialogue, even if it's just asking the questions. And then, I was impressed, to be honest.
And that's the interesting thing. Like when you've got kind of a lead or director of marketing or content or whichever discipline, they know what to prompt. They know what questions to ask. When you've got somebody who's kind of more fresh on the scene, new to the company or new to the industry, they won't necessarily have all that information in the background to ask the right questions. So if you can, rather than you having to tell it what to do, you get it to prompt you with the right information, then that essentially opens the doors for lesser experienced individuals to then use those more advanced tools as well, and get high quality outputs as well. And that actually leads us quite nicely onto engineering of automation, where this is quite relevant. So the challenge here in this use case is, for engineers, as Ashley and I know very well, the challenge is software actually good enough to release into production? And this is the challenge that engineers face all the time, in terms of, have they managed to solve every scenario that software might experience when it's deployed into production? And have they tested it all efficiently so that they know it's safe and it's stable? So this is where essentially those, as you're building out a change that's been requested, bugs can appear at any point in that life cycle. It could be during the development, it could be during the testing, it could be after deployment. So things change even in production. Maybe one of the third-party APIs changes or goes down. Maybe an update to a certain package on a server or something like that kicks something out. So it can all be very high stress unless you have the right checks and processes in place to test and make sure that the software you're deploying is very stable. So, and many retailers will even go so far as not to release in the weeks or months up to a certain high traffic period. So maybe it's like the Black Friday sales or Christmas or something like that, where they're getting those peak periods of traffic. And this is essentially the challenge, one of the challenges that the AI is helping us solve, in that we can now detect if there's certain changes. So how well that software is performing under those new changes, essentially. So the question there for the engineer is, should I roll back to the last known working version or not? Is it something that I can fix quickly? Have I safely deployed the web services? Are they stable? And this is where we can use the AI to help with those deployments in the deployment pipeline. And this is maybe a combination of generative AI and traditional AI, but it's understanding like when they're building these solutions, there's a huge amount of logs that get generated every day. And it's maybe even error messages as well. And it's understanding which errors are okay. That's something we can deal with. It's a lesser priority. Which errors are something that we need to respond to right now. And understanding like, are there new error log messages? Is there a change in the in like an increase in error log messages, which means there's something extra we need to respond to? Now, going through all that information takes time, but you can actually use AI to help you detect those changes, and then you can use generative AI to help you solve those issues by integrating it with the engineer's own playbooks, so that the lead engineers and directors, the ones who have the experience of the systems, can write the processes. Maybe there's manual processes involved to go back and solve something. They can build out those playbooks, and then that can be integrated, as we saw before, into a chat style system that can then help them kind of solve those issues without necessarily having experienced them before.
And I think that's a really important point, right, to
Yeah.
address at the end. And maybe I'll let you do the demo. But what we're going to show is that anomaly detection and log anomaly detection and log event detection has been around a long time. But what we're seeing is through the use of some of these additional tools, like using Vertex AI Search to import playbooks into the context of generative AI, we're actually able to train the models on how to suggest how to solve these technical issues. And I think that's a really important piece that hasn't been around before, is prompting you how to solve them. But I'll let you do the demo, and this is a project that's very close to me. I'd love to talk about it a bit more.
Yeah, so this is essentially our resolution hub. So this is a tool that essentially takes the challenge or the question from an engineer. And in this respect, we've done it for engineering, but this could easily be applied to just about any other discipline. Now, it takes their question and it interprets their question, feeds it to a large language model, and then brings back that response and shows it to the user. So think of this kind of like a chat GPT or a bard or such, where you can actually go and you can ask questions, but this is now tailored to a very specific topic in terms of cloud engineering. So the bot is smart in this area. Now, this could be anything from kind of which products do we have on shelves, how do I make the supermarket cookie, like what any of those questions where it's a certain information that needs to be provided to the user. Now, the smart bit here is that we can combine this with so let me just show an example here. I'll just fire off one of these questions, but so this will go off now, and it'll essentially ask the large language model this question, and it will come back with a response, some suggestions. Now, where this gets interesting is you can ask it. You can say, like, I've got a problem with my Postgres database. Like, how do I access my Postgres database using Cloud Shell, as another example? And it will go off and it'll ask those questions and actually be able to not only provide the answers, but it will ask you questions in order to get to the correct answer as well. So what we can then do is we can combine that result with the playbook information as well. So where we might have all of that information that, like I said, the leads and the directors have built around how to solve issues, we can then have the generative AI model kind of guide them towards the correct answer. We don't want to send them to the wrong set of playbooks. Again, that's the kind of the information overload, the friction that I mentioned earlier, where they've got all of this information on how to solve issues, but it's which one of those playbooks is the right one for me at this point in time. And without having access to the right people to guide you to that solution, it can take time, and that time is downtime essentially in this scenario. So it's time until you essentially solve that issue.
And then there's a question in the chat, which I think is one I'd like to expand on. The question is, how do we make sure we do what we can to validate the responses back from the large language model? Do you think approaches such as fine tuning can help here? Because every enterprise has Service desk and engineering will be unique to that. And absolutely, so like that's the key benefit here of using some of these technologies, and that's why we've put in an emphasis on Vertex AI and enterprise search. What enterprise search or Vertex AI search has brought into this picture is the ability to fine tune it and also loading data with your playbooks. And also, let's say you have like incident logs on what the issue was, how you solved it. You also have playbooks on how to address a wide variety of scenarios. What the large language model is able to do is to understand better context around what you're doing. Of course, there needs to be continuous fine tuning over time. It's not something that, I mean, has to be continuous, but you do need to intermittently fine tune. And obviously, the bigger your data set around, here's the issue we had, here's how we solved it, but also feeding it the context of the technologies that were associated with that issue, then it will get better. The responses do get better, and that's the benefit of these technologies versus traditionally just having like a smart search. So it is that fine tuning. It is being able to easily load in external information, as well as the fine tuning that actually makes these much more accurate. And what we said is that, is that point that Mark just covered around having that conversation where it will ask you back questions, is that what we've seen is really improved the results, because what we've done is to find, like, before it tries to answer these questions, it must have a reasonable understanding of the technologies that's used and the services that are in play that are being impacted. So if it doesn't have that clear picture already, it will ask you these questions like, what cloud platform were you using? What technologies were you using? What was happening at the time? It will build up a technology profile before it searches your playbooks and before it interprets the fine-tuned model. So it's like this combination of services and features that has really, we've seen like a significant and quite a good quality feedback now from these models. And this is why, again, we've put an emphasis on Vertex AI, because they've kind of built these tools out of the box now for you to do it.
Yeah, and I should give a demo of that in a minute as well. Just to show you kind of how that works. But yeah, it is that's it. So the fine tuning, and it only takes kind of 100 to 500 samples to really start seeing a good impact from those LLM responses. So that's an easy amount of data to capture, and you can start.
And I think, unless you've played with these models, you'll realize that when you actually ask questions, you actually, before you submit the request to the large language model, you sort of half prompt the type of format and the context of the output that you're expecting, so that it is, it does get better and gets more accurate. And then obviously, as you fine tune that over time, and you give it a template format for the response to say, maybe provide it in bullet points or whatever it is that you would want as a part of your response, it is increasing and improving the type of response that you get back to be as relevant as possible. Cool.
So, the next use case is a bit of a future use case. So I just want to check it in. So this is a bit of a future one, but replenishing stock on shelves. So the scenario here is that essentially stock is being taken off shelves or off racks, and there can be a time delay between the moment that shelf is emptied and the moment that customer goes to checkout. So even if you've got detection on the number of items at checkout, there is still a delay there, where essentially there may be items that are unavailable. Now, for high throughput items, maybe like groceries or such in a supermarket, where those items are continuously having to be rotated and refreshed, that can mean that there's periods where those items are empty, and that customer's just going to think, oh, they're out of stock, I'll just carry on. I'll find it somewhere else. They go to a different store. So that stock needs to be rotated, but for the staff members, they don't know, they can't keep an eye on every product in the store at all times, or even in those high traffic areas. So it's understanding which items to replenish, essentially. So Google did have a go at this. I forget who it was they did it with, but they set up a camera on the shop floor in high traffic areas, and they were detecting the different items on the shelves to see kind of what was in stock, what wasn't. And when there was a gap, they'd send a notification to the staff member to go and fill in the gap in the shop floor. So the problem with this is that they they didn't quite get it, because there's quite a few imperfect real life conditions I've got written here. So different camera angles, different angles of the product on the shelf, different lighting, seasonal package changes. So packaging would change, and therefore the bot wouldn't be able to detect what it was anymore. So there was a number of different things that they had to kind of overcome. They are working on, but I mean, as close as they are now, it won't be long until this one's available as well. So yeah, it's watch this space in this use case scenario.
Yeah.
Cool. So question is, how can your team get started with AI? So I'm going to give a quick demo. So we mentioned the Vertex AI. We've been talking about this a lot. So this is the Vertex AI dashboard. I'm not going to go through everything in here in today's session. I've got another session, which I'll mention in a bit, that goes into a bit more detail. But just to give an example, so you've got in here the model garden, which contains hundreds of different models that have been created by various sources. So you've got the Facebook Llama 2 model there, for example, or Meta, should I say, Meta Llama 2 model. And yeah, you've got all of the a number of different public models that are available, all within this model garden. You can start building on top of these immediately. So they've got all the tools you need in order to start building on top of them. Now, so your engineers can very quickly come in here and actually start working with this information. You don't need data scientists. Like an engineer, reasonable level of expertise can come in here and actually start playing with these things and generate the code they need in order to make requests. So just to give an example, so I'm going to look at the language section here and start a new text chat. So this is the Chat Bison, which actually is the Palm 2 model from Google. So just to give an example, I have a prompt here that I've pre-made, or sorry, this is the context for the chat. So this is giving the chatbot the understanding of what its purpose is. So you can set up a context to say, what do you want it to do? So I want it to act like a content specialist and create blog posts. And I've got a number of other suggestions here on how it should create them, kind of the length it should be, the kind of format that I want it to have. And then I can literally just drop in the title of an article, and that will then go off and it will start generating that blog post for me. Now, it may not be the most perfect blog post, but you're already 60% of the way there, 80% of the way there. Sometimes they're great and you can just post them straight away, but usually they require some modification. Now, yeah, let's give that a moment. So it's gone off and it's come up with 10 different articles that it can do. 10 different recipes that it can create based on the prompt I gave. And yeah, that's an introduction. You can also play with some of these parameters. So you can change the length of the expected output and that sort of thing on here. So there is some advice that comes with these as well. So my point is, not without going into too much of the detail, it's very easy to start testing these things. Like, you've got access there to the prompt infrastructure. You've got here the code you'd need to actually make a request using an API. You've got, yeah, the ability to provide additional examples. So you can do some basic fine tuning. You're not going to get a huge amount in this box. There is another section within. So if you go to, if I exit that, you can go to tuning here and you can set up your own models. So you can take an existing model, you can fine tune it with your own data on top, putting all your data onto Google Drive and such, and get it up and running. So you'd have then a very fine tuned model with your own brand voice or whatever you want in there as well. So yeah, it's very quick essentially to get started and easy, and that's the barrier that essentially they're breaking down. They're making it easy to access these AIs and be able to iterate on them and improve them as well. Cool. So yes, so according to McKinsey & Company, 75% of Gen AI's value will be realized across customer operations, marketing and sales, software engineering, and R&D. So these are the areas that we're seeing initial movement in. Good areas to focus on because there'll be a lot of examples already. And yeah, good place to get started. But not to say they're the only ones, but definitely a good place to get started. So if you want to head down this route and you want to build out your own generative AI model, how do you approach this? And this is how we would do that essentially. So we've got The first 4 steps here are basically our masterclass that we've built out, which I'll show in a second. But this is the routine essentially we would follow on any new Gen AI project. So the first challenge, and it's where a lot of businesses are stuck right now, is around prioritizing a challenge to solve. So a lot of them have either come up with an idea of a use case they want to solve, and they've immediately started work on it without having done the step of understanding, is this the right challenge to be working on? Is it do we have the data available? Who is this challenge? Who are we solving this challenge for? And how could we enrich that experience to actually make it more useful than just a chatbot? And that's the steps you need to go through, is actually to understand which use cases, what are the business challenges that we want to solve, and what initiatives could we come up with to solve them using Gen AI and such. And then from that, which of those use cases has the business value? Like which ones are going to make the most impact? And then that way you manage to narrow it down to 1 or 2 that you can actually agree on as a business. These are the ones that are actually going to, I'm not a fan of the phrase, but move the needle to actually make that make that an impact, to then fuel additional investment into these technologies. So that's understanding the use case, and as part of that, you would understand the KPIs. So understanding how you can assess how well that model is doing. After you've got that, you've then got a use case and initiative you can get started on. So then you can think about kind of forming a team to start building out a POC. So you'd need somebody to work on the prompts, somebody to work on the UX, do the engineering, project manager maybe and such. So getting those select individuals together so that you can then start quickly iterating and building out a proof concept that proves the solution can be achieved. Once you've got that, we wouldn't go straight into engineering. We would go back into the Vertex AI and start working with those prompts, using that interface to kind of check, can we give the prompts, what information do we get back when we give the prompts we need? So we'll work on crafting some good prompts to start with, to see what did the LLMs give us just off the bat without any fine tuning or any extra data or anything. That gives you a starting point and an understanding of kind of the baseline and what you're trying to shoot for in terms of accuracy and the user experience. And then you can start thinking about, okay, let's work on building out a user interface, user experience that kind of fits that persona. So how are they going to interact with this? Maybe it's a search, maybe it's a bot, maybe it's a custom tool, maybe it's an automated routine. What is it? What is that experience going to be? And then we can move into understanding how we make that model better, essentially. So how are we going to do that fine tuning? Where's the data coming from? What cadence is it going to be on? How are we going to assess that as well? So at that point, you've now got an experience that's kind of doing okay. You've done some testing. You've got a process in place to refine and improve it. At this point, you can then start expanding it to more users. Still internal, still a small group, but now you can start getting more feedback in terms of the questions that are being asked, like of the bot. So you want to be logging those questions and understanding kind of what are they asking and how well does the bot or the prompt or LLM perform against those requests. And that's where your KPI assessment really comes in. So you're then tracking a number of metrics to assess that quality. And then you can move into launch. So it's a rapid process. We did ours in 2 weeks or so, but it's the understanding of how do we get through to somewhere where we can demonstrate that this actually proves out the concept and is something that we should progress with further. And then you move into maintenance mode. So very, very much like a website or such, like launch isn't the end. You don't just build it and forget. You're going to get new questions. You're going to get new scenarios. The data is going to change. So they need continuous refining and enhancement over time as well. And that's, I would say, look out for this future webinar. We don't actually have a date for this yet. I think it's going to be in a couple of weeks' time. So this webinar is around kind of the actually working with it a bit more. So this is a little bit more technical. How do we get into that? Actually working with those ML and AI APIs, and when should we use which? When should we opt for a traditional AI model versus kind of a new generative AI style interface? So we delve into that in a bit more detail, and we also look at the KPIs as well, that you might want to be thinking about when you're building out these models as well. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, so that process of building out the POC is, yeah, we do offer an accelerator for that. So this is our sales piece for the session. So this is where essentially we do that entire session from the initial masterclass. We'll help you build out that POC. We'll help you build out the prompts and actually get a working POC up and running, after we've helped you kind of identify which use case it is you should be going for. And it is really, just to show you, the masterclass that is the first place essentially we would start. It's understanding what are the use cases, and I'll drop this in the chat just in case anyone wants to look at it. But yeah, what are the use cases we should be focusing on? Like what are the business challenges, and yeah, how should we essentially be working with generative AI or AI? Is it a challenge we actually should be solving? Is there enough business impact to warrant working on it and providing that investment? So that's the first step, essentially going through understanding what are the challenges, who are we solving it for, and yeah, this essentially stops you doing that piece at the beginning where you're spinning your wheels, unsure of is this something we should be focusing on as a business? Are we going to get enough value? Who are we doing this for? It's really understanding that process, and we give some just see the agenda there. We go through and we help you understand kind of the art of the possible. What sort of use cases is it that AI can solve, and yeah, how do we build those ideas out into actual POCs that actually then can make some impactful change for the business? Cool. And yeah, I think that is it for today. So are there anything else, Ashley, you'd like to add, or should we delve into questions?
No, I think that's it. I think we only really have one other outstanding question that's worth addressing. And one of the questions was, one of the bigger challenges is how do you test Gen AI and its responses, considering all of the different ways and interactions that you can have with the generative AI itself? And there's no real defined flow for how do you test the accuracy of the results ultimately?
Yes. How do you test it? So, well, the first thing is to actually look at the model itself. So they have metrics, well, not all of them, but a lot of the major ones have metrics already where they've done assessments to see, given a standard set of questions, how accurate are they at just answering questions. So if you're looking at a text like a chat style question Q&A, obviously the image ones and stuff are going to be a bit different, but that's essentially where we come back to that other session. I'll say, look at this one. We go through a number of KPIs on this session, and they're basic ones that kind of apply generally across the board in terms of AI, and the kind of KPIs you want to be running. But there's also, you need to think of it from the user experience as well. So it very much depends on that actual use case. Like, what is it you're solving for that user? And you want to create KPIs that actually measure that experience for the user. Like, what are they trying to achieve? How often does it get it right? And you need a way to assess that and be able to then iteratively improve it as well. So yeah, sorry, it's not.
I'm not sure I understand.
Siri doesn't understand either, but yeah, there's not a perfect answer for that. But yeah, there are a number of basic KPIs you can use to assess the API and ML APIs in general, but you do need to craft some, to really understand it, craft some specific ones for that persona who you're developing the solution for, which is going to be based on the context then.
Yeah, great. And I think that's it. We're at the end. Doesn't seem to be any more questions in the chat. Yeah, if anyone does have any more questions, you can always reach out to us directly. You can have a reach out to us on LinkedIn, on email, through our website, on any of the many forms of communications we now have that are on the screen. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for listening. Again, we would love to have some more conversations around any questions that people have. Feel free to comment on the videos. And thank you very much.
If anyone is heading down this route and you'd like to be featured, do drop me a message. I'm looking for others to chat to on this podcast. We do run these quite regularly. Love to hear your stories and actually delve into a bit more detail and see what everyone's doing and potentially provide some assistance as well. So yeah, it'd be great to have a chat and see what comes of it.
Great.
So thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, great to have you here, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks all.